What is going on YouTube? My name is Jose Ramos Jr. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And for those that have been following the channel, you would know that I've been covering a lot more professional wrestling content in these daily videos. As a lifelong wrestling fan, you better believe I'm looking real forward to the build up to WrestleMania 40, arguably the biggest WrestleMania of all time. And I thought, what better way of anticipating this upcoming WrestleMania by traveling back in time to the very first WrestleMania that really attracted me to the sport and to this great source of entertainment that has found so many ways to entertain me along with millions across the globe. But before we continue on with this video, please don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe on this video. Keep supporting the podcast, the J Area Podcast. Now without further ado, let's go ahead and begin the video. I can remember there was a time being, the year was 2005, and I was still religiously watching only WWE SmackDown at that time because it was the only channel that we really had that was, relevant to a lot of the daily activity that was being shown on television at that time. We only had access to UPN. So I can remember every Thursday, yes, because SmackDown was airing on Thursdays by then, SmackDown, and watching my favorites like a young John Cena, The Undertaker, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero. JBL was the WWE champion for his 280-day reign. And we didn't watch pay-per-views at that time. We just kept watching, SmackDown. We just watched the shows. And I remember traveling to Walmart. We went to the store, and I can remember seeing a DVD, WrestleMania 21. And by the time I had seen it at the store, it was about August of 2005. WrestleMania 21, of course, took place April 3rd of that same year. And I remember asking my parents if we can buy it and if I can watch it. And that would be the very first wrestling DVD, maybe even the first DVD that I ever had of my own. And I can remember just leaving it on replay throughout the course of that summer and really analyzing and really just memorizing each segment, each wrestling match, and it helped dictate who would be my favorites for the coming years, what was my favorite style of wrestling, and what storylines that were being built then would help kind of determine what I would look forward to in a wrestling storyline. WrestleMania 21, that emanated from the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California, again, April 3rd, 2005, was a big shift in the company at that time. But even for a young fan like me, it would help dictate the stars that I would support, guys like a Rey Mysterio, like an Edge, John Cena, Batista, The Undertaker, Randy Orton, Shawn Michaels. There were multiple stars on that show that had show-stealing performances, in my opinion, of course. And I tend to look at it with, a fond memory because of the nostalgia, because I was a young 8-year-old just mesmerized by the sheer talent and the match quality that was on that show. So I look back and just looking at the card itself, I did mention that this was a transitional time for the company. For those who don't know, and that's something I would love to use this channel as an opportunity, is to help educate fans who are either just becoming fans or don't have as depth of knowledge in terms of the storylines, in terms of the history that have followed in these past few years, past few decades. But at that time, in 2002, we'll travel back a few years. In 2002, Stone Cold Steve Austin had just walked away from the company. People didn't realize that we only had a limited amount of time with him after his walkout in 2002. Now, he did return in 2003, but that was for a short stint on the active roster. And then you have a guy like The Rock, who had left for Hollywood, now becoming a star with The Mummy Returns and earning other, titles such as The Walking Tall. He also had The Rundown and was aspiring to become a successful actor. So this left a void that they needed to fill in terms of who was going to be the top guy, who was going to be the star, the main eventer, to help business, essentially. You had the hottest period in professional wrestling, the Attitude Era, and two of your biggest stars, arguably the two biggest stars in wrestling at that point, were now gone. So they looked to guys like a Brock Lesnar. They looked to other guys to help find that spot and fill in the void. But then a guy like Brock Lesnar had left in 2004, trying to pursue a career in the NFL. He would be a tryout for the Minnesota Vikings, and ultimately that didn't work out. And he would go to the UFC, and we knew how that worked out. So in 2005, you had champions by established veterans like a John Bradshaw Layfield, like a Triple H, and you were looking for the next set of stars that would help carry the company for years to come. But I want to first look at the card start to finish, because in my opinion, WrestleMania 21 begins with one of the greatest opening pay-per-view matches of all time, let alone just WrestleMania. But a contest between Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero in itself, on paper, sounds fantastic. And you'd have to travel back 8 years prior in 1997 when they had their all-time classic at Halloween Havoc in 97. And this match in itself was very serviceable. It may not have had the match length that it deserved, but certainly the match quality was there. And this was very early on in their storyline that would become a year-long feud for 2005, and a feud that really sticks in the memory of myself and my brother, as it helped elevate both Rey and Eddie to the legacies that they have and that we know now. But knowing that this was the first time a set of tag team champions would face off one-on-one against each other in a friendly, competitive matchup, it had little to no stakes, or so we thought. But just the athleticism and the chemistry that these two displayed during that match, and being able to end it off with a surprise roll-up victory by Rey Mysterio, and then again planting the seeds for what this year-long feud would become. For me, it elevates it to probably one of the top 3 best match openings in WrestleMania history. And then we're followed by the very first ever Money in the Bank ladder match. In my opinion, the very best Money in the Bank ladder match. You had guys like Shelton Benjamin, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Christian, Kane, and Edge, all at the top of their game at this point in their careers. And it was a showcase of the talent that they had on the Raw roster, while also a new innovative match type that would become its own pay-per-view event in years to come. And at that point, we didn't know what the Money in the Bank contract really entailed. We didn't know how it could be used, or the level of importance it would carry for not only superstars and their careers, but also storylines, and how it could really be plugged in as a way to reignite a feud, begin a feud, maybe spark a heel turn, a babyface turn. It was such a useful and innovative tool that would help progress these stories while also elevating whoever held that contract. And again, in my opinion, the all-time greatest Money in the Bank ladder match is that very first one, which was won by Edge. And Edge, in a short time, had become one of the biggest heels in the company. But then you add the briefcase to it, and then the whole scandal with Matt Hardy and Lita, and you have the makings of one of the all-time greatest villains in wrestling history. He would cash in that Money in the Bank briefcase that next January on John Cena, more on him later, and again establish himself as one of the greatest of all time, and certainly what is a Hall of Fame career. And you want to talk about Hall of Fame careers, I mean, the next matchup was The Undertaker versus Randy Orton, and what would become one of the very first matches in WrestleMania history to really acknowledge the importance of his WrestleMania streak. At this point in time, he was 12-0, just defeating Kane the year prior. And what was billed as a legend versus legend killer match, all the stakes were there. For me personally, I think this was the match that really determined, hey, The Undertaker can go. He can have these all-time classic WrestleMania matches, because at this point, his best matches was probably against Ric Flair and Triple H at WrestleMania 18 and 17 respectively. And that's not to say that they weren't good matches, but to have him go up against someone as young and hungry as a Randy Orton, again, the legend killer, it was just an all-time classic for me personally. The counters that he would display, I think the best matches that The Undertaker has are against those who are witty enough and savvy enough to have these counters. You look at matches like against CM Punk at WrestleMania 29, you look at the match at WrestleMania 24 against an Edge. Those kind of swarmy little heels that he has to, fend off with every kind of counter that they produce. It really demonstrates not only the level of intelligence, but just the experience that an Undertaker has been able to amass over the course of his 30-year career. And then you include the interference by Cowboy Bob Orton, who was just inducted in the Hall of Fame the night prior, and you have the makings for, again, an all-time classic WrestleMania showing. And again, it elevated Randy Orton to a spot that we hadn't seen before, because only a year prior, he was in a multi-man tag team match, and now he's on the biggest stage against arguably the biggest star in WrestleMania history, The Undertaker. And there's always been a saying for him, and he says, "I'll make you famous." And on that night, we saw Randy Orton come from here and then elevate himself even higher. I think if there was anybody to have ended Undertaker's WrestleMania streak in those early WrestleManias, Randy Orton would have been the guy. And I'm glad they didn't do it. I wish they would have never had him lost. But again, it's one of those what ifs. Moving past that, we had a women's title match between Trish Stratus and Christy Hemme. This match easily is a forgotten match, especially in the era of the Divas era. You don't really get a lot of high quality matchups, but you do see the story, and I love the packages, the video packages that they have over the course of this pay-per-view, really highlighting and cementing the reasons behind these feuds, the reasons behind these matches. And you see Christy Hemme, who had earned an opportunity to be on the cover of Playboy at that time, and Trish Stratus being the women's champion and kind of deciding, why you when I'm the champion? I believe I should be on the cover. Why are they settling for someone like you? And then you add Lita, who is in the corner of a Christy Hemme, Lita being the all-time greatest rival to Trish Stratus. And again, you have the makings of a match, although albeit Christy Hemme hadn't have that level of experience to that point. She did win the Diva Search in October. So what would that be? Maybe 6 months have passed since she started on the Raw roster. But by adding Lita and adding that level of history between those two, there's a level of interest that I can get into. And keep in mind, this was really my first exposure to the Raw roster, because SmackDown didn't have a women's title. So here I am watching a Raw championship match involving the girls. And it's like it's something different. It's something enticing. It's something exciting. Ultimately, Trish Stratus would win the match and continue on her women's championship reign that would last over a year. She wouldn't lose until 2006. And then up next, what I believe to be the match of the night. Another interpromotional matchup. A guy from Raw and a guy from SmackDown going one-on-one. And quite frankly, is one of my favorite matches of all time. This match, Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels, in my top 3 of all time. If I'm a diehard wrestling fan and somebody were to come to me and say, hey, I want you to show me one of your favorite wrestling matches. I want you to show me one of the best wrestling matches that you have seen, because I want to get into the sport. I want to get into it. This is the match I would show them. Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania, having match of the year for so many consecutive years. Kurt Angle, a wrestling machine, won an Olympic gold medal with a broken neck. And you have the makings of an ultra competitive, compelling, and honestly just thrilling matchup. Kurt Angle being the technician, being able to apply these submission holds and get the upper hand of Shawn Michaels, not only because of his bad back, but also being able to attack the lower limbs, his ankle, his legs, the one source of power that he has in order to combat with the sweet chin music, the super kick. But then you have the savvy veteran in Shawn Michaels, who was injured for 4 years, coming back to show the world that I still got it. And even when the lights are on brightest at WrestleMania, I won't fold. It was a rivalry that picked up at the Royal Rumble in January and ultimately culminated at WrestleMania and what would become the first of 3 matches between the three. And as a side note, that's another thing I loved about this WrestleMania, is 3 of my favorite matches, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, began February 2005, wouldn't end until September. Undertaker and Randy Orton began in March of 2005. It didn't end until December. And then Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels would have matches that spanned from January of 2005 all the way to October. 3 long-term stories being told over the course of a calendar year. And each one of them were a banger. Each one of them high quality. Each one of them involved Hall of Fame talent. And this match right here, that's why I give it match of the night. To this day, I can throw on this match and I still get the goosebumps from when I was watching when I was 8 years old, just because of the level of intensity, just because of the level of chemistry, just because of the quality that these two put forward. And again, it's another reason why Shawn Michaels is my favorite of all time, because his matches always had this extra layer of drama, suspense, but also excitement that you couldn't match with any other wrestler. He was able to do that and elevate even the smallest of storylines into maybe match of the night. Not to say that this was a small storyline, but in the grand scheme of things, you look at the two main event matches, and we'll get to those in a minute. But before then, we had what, quite frankly, I said the women's match was one of the more forgettable matches of this card. Up next, we had a sumo match between The Big Show versus Akibono. And it's nothing really to talk about. You can easily gloss over this. I had the DVD, and I remember watching it every now and then. But whenever it came up, I just skipped it because it's just short. It's literally what it sounds like. It's a sumo match. It's what it is. It's probably the lowest point of this event. And I know 8-year-old me found it entertaining. But now looking back, it's just there for a little celebrity appearance, I guess, for Akibono, one of the world's most prominent sumo wrestlers at that point. Aside from that, you can really skip it, respectfully. Yeah, you don't need to watch it. Because after that, then you have the two main event slots. With first being the WWE Championship, JBL defending his title, again, his 280-day reign against John Cena, a young John Cena, who was just barely coming off of his U.S. title reign that he lost to an Orlando Jordan due to interference by JBL's cabinet members. And although I will say it's not the best match, like I said, Kurt Angle and Shawn was the best match. But being able to see a young John Cena and evolve into who he has become, into who we recognize him to be, and then you accompany that with the rise of Batista on Monday Night Raw, who would dethrone Triple H for the World Heavyweight title, culminating a huge storyline in Evolution as they began a group together and seeing it implode. You get you get 3 stars elevated simultaneously. Batista winning the world title, John Cena winning the WWE title, and Edge winning Money in the Bank. These are the 3 guys that would help carry this now era in professional wrestling. You had one of the biggest heels in the WWE in Edge, the next big face in John Cena, and then Batista, who would become that megastar who could be able to translate from pro wrestling to Hollywood. WrestleMania 21 for me is that event that helped solidify my obsession, my fandom of the sport. And if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest you do. And as a wrestling fan, speaking to non-wrestling fans, if there's an event that I'm going to show you as like a nexus point into an entry, I will say an entry point into wrestling, this is one of those events. Because it's one of those transitional periods where you're leaving one era into another. It honors the past while also elevating the future. And when WrestleMania went Hollywood in 2005, it really sparked so many different emotions for me. Because you look to the future, WrestleMania 39, which was another WrestleMania that went Hollywood, another transitional time in the WWE's history. And to see those two parallel events and how they carried on their own destinies, their own journeys, but also the similarities of rising stars, great matches, changing of the times. It's the very reason why I decided to do these YouTube videos and cover more professional wrestling, because it's the hottest it has been in the last quarter century. And as it continues to build and build towards WrestleMania 40, you can expect me to be producing more content leading up to it. And I look forward to providing that content and to hearing your guys' support and hearing your guys' comments. What do you think is the WrestleMania that helps solidify your fandom? What are some of your WrestleMania moments that you just can't get out of your mind? Who are some of your favorite matches and wrestlers to have partaken at WrestleMania? And with that being said, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and, like I said, comment down your feelings about WrestleMania 21 or any other WrestleMania for that much being. And for that, I thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you guys in the next video.